He told his 7-month pregnant wife, "That baby isn't mine." 3 months later, the most feared mafia boss in New Orleans sat alone in his office staring at a sealed DNA report that could either prove him right or bury him alive. Outside, rain beat against the windows. Down below, his men guarded the docks, the money kept moving, and the city still whispered his name with fear. But none of that power could help Damian Cross open one envelope. Because sometimes the truth doesn't destroy you when it arrives. Sometimes it destroys you because it arrives too late. This is not just a story about betrayal. It is about pride, trust, regret, and the kind of love that cannot be forced back with money or fear. Stay until the end, because the real test was never the DNA. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. But before that envelope ever reached Damian Cross's desk, before the rain, before the hospital call, before the truth came dressed in black ink and numbers, there had been a morning in New Orleans when Elena still believed her marriage could be saved by tenderness. The Cross mansion sat behind iron gates in the Garden District, hidden beneath old oak trees heavy with moss. From the street, it looked like a home built for a family with history. Tall white columns, wide balconies, gas lanterns glowing beside the front doors, roses climbing along the brick walls. But behind the beauty, there were cameras in every corner, armed men near every entrance, and silent rules that everyone understood without being told. No one walked through Damian Cross's house without being seen. No one raised their voice unless Damian allowed it. No one touched Elena. That last rule was the one his men feared most. To the city, Damian was the man who controlled the river. If cargo moved through the port of New Orleans after dark, he knew about it. If a warehouse changed hands, he had signed off on it. If a politician smiled too warmly at a rival, Damian heard before the night was over. His name did not need to be shouted. It traveled in low voices behind locked doors in the pause before someone decided whether to lie. But inside the mansion, Elena had once known a different man. She had known the man who took off his suit jacket in the kitchen and loosened his tie like he was removing armor. The man who brought her coffee without asking how she wanted it, because he remembered. The man who stood behind her at the bathroom mirror and rested both hands on her growing belly with a kind of wonder that made his silence feel holy. That man still existed. At least Elena had believed he did. She was 7 months pregnant that morning, moving slowly through the kitchen in a pale blue dress that brushed against her knees. The summer heat had already settled over New Orleans, thick and sweet, pressing against the windows. Outside, cicadas screamed from the trees. Somewhere beyond the gates, a car engine idled while one of Damian's guards spoke quietly into a radio. Elena tried to ignore the sound. She wanted one peaceful morning. On the kitchen island, she had arranged a small surprise. An ultrasound photo rested inside a cream-colored envelope. Beside it lay a soft blue baby blanket she had bought from a tiny shop on Magazine Street. It was folded carefully the way her mother used to fold linens when Elena was a girl, corners smooth, edges aligned, love hidden in ordinary gestures. She touched the blanket with 2 fingers and smiled. Their son. She had learned that word at the clinic the day before, and she had carried it home like a secret flame. A son. For months, Damian had pretended he did not care whether the baby was a boy or a girl. He had said all the right things. Healthy was enough. Safe was enough. Elena was enough. But she had seen the way his eyes lingered on fathers walking with little boys near Jackson Square. She had seen how quietly he watched toddlers chase pigeons outside restaurants. She had felt his hand tighten around hers when a child laughed nearby. Damian Cross, feared by men twice his size, was terrified of becoming a father. Not because he did not want the child, because he wanted the child too much. The front door opened somewhere down the hall. Low voices followed. Shoes crossed marble. A guard murmured something Elena could not hear. Then Damien entered the kitchen, still in his black suit from an early meeting at the docks. He looked tired. That was the first thing she noticed. Not weak. Damien never allowed himself to look weak, but tired in a way that lived under the skin. His dark hair was slightly damp from the humid morning air, and his jaw carried the faint shadow of a sleepless night. His eyes found Elena first, then dropped to her belly. Something in his face softened before he had time to hide it. Elena leaned against the counter. "You're late." Damien stopped near the island and looked at the clock above the stove. 7 minutes. For you, that's almost a scandal. The corner of his mouth moved. "I'll punish traffic personally. You say that like half the city wouldn't believe you." He came closer and the room changed around him. It always did. Damien carried danger the way some men carried cologne. Even when he was gentle, the air seemed aware of him. He placed one hand on the counter beside her, not touching her yet. "How are you feeling?" Elena tilted her head. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether my husband plans to answer his phone through breakfast." His eyes flickered toward the device in his pocket. "I can turn it off." "You can, for you." She studied him, pretending to doubt him. "That sounds dramatic." "I'm a dramatic man." "No, Damien. You're a dangerous man with dramatic tendencies." This time he smiled for real. There it was. The man she married. For a few seconds, the mansion felt less like a fortress and more like a home. Damien reached for her belly, then paused, asking without words. Elena took his hand and placed it against the curve of her dress. The baby moved almost immediately, a firm little kick beneath Damien's palm. His expression changed so completely that Elena's throat tightened. All his sharp edges went quiet. There she whispered. Damien stared at his hand. "He's strong." Elena caught the word and held it carefully. "He..." Damien looked up. "I don't know. Just said it." She bit back a smile. "Maybe you're right." His gaze narrowed, slightly curious. "Elena." She turned toward the island and slid the cream envelope closer. "I had another appointment yesterday." His fingers left her belly. "You went without me." The softness did not vanish, but something guarded entered his voice. "You were in Baton Rouge. You should have taken Victor. Victor was one of his men, not Victor Kane." Elena had always disliked that Damien employed more than one man with the same name. It felt like a bad omen waiting for a reason. "I took myself." His jaw tightened. "We talked about that." "No. You talked. I listened." "That isn't always the same thing." His eyes moved over her face, then toward the envelope. "What appointment?" Elena sighed, choosing patience. "My blood pressure was high last week, remember? Dr. Harlan asked me to come by his clinic for a second scan." Damien's expression hardened by a fraction. "Dr. Harlan, the specialist Dr. Reeves referred me to. You didn't mention a man." She stared at him. "A doctor, Damien. A doctor can still be a man, and a husband can still be ridiculous." He did not smile this time. Elena felt a small chill move through her, strange against the summer heat. She had seen this side of him before. Not often, not fully, but sometimes when a waiter looked at her too long, or when an old friend from college sent her a message, or when she wanted to go somewhere without a driver. Damien would become quiet. Too quiet. His eyes would begin searching for threats even when the only thing in front of him was love. At first, she had mistaken it for devotion, then protection, then fear. Now she was not sure where one ended and the other began. She pushed the envelope toward him anyway. "Open it." He looked at it, then at her. "What is it?" "A surprise." The baby kicked again. Elena rested a hand on her belly. Damien reached for the envelope. His phone buzzed. The sound cut through the kitchen like a blade. Elena closed her eyes. "Damien." He did not take the phone out. It buzzed again. Then again. His hand remained over the envelope, but his attention had shifted. She watched the change happen in his body before it reached his face. The slight tightening of his shoulders, the stillness in his fingers, the old obedience to danger. "Turn it off," she said softly. He took the phone from his pocket. "I just need to see who it is." That was the kind of sentence that had eaten hundreds of moments from their marriage. Just one call, just one message, just one emergency, just one more thing more important than being present. Damien looked at the screen. Unknown number. Elena saw it too. Leave it. He should have. He almost did. Then the phone buzzed again, longer this time, a string of messages landing one after another. His eyes sharpened. Whatever affection had been in his face a moment earlier disappeared behind the man the city knew. He opened the first message. Elena watched him read. At first his face gave away nothing. Then his skin seemed to lose color beneath the gold light spilling through the windows. Damien. He swiped to the next image. His jaw locked. She stepped closer. "What is it?" He turned the phone slightly away from her. That hurt before she understood why. "Damien, show me." He did not. She reached for the phone, but he lifted it out of reach, not roughly, but with enough control to remind her that this kitchen, this house, this entire world had been built to obey him. Her heart began to pound. "Show me." Slowly, he turned the screen. The first photo showed Elena outside the prenatal clinic, one hand at the base of her belly, the other holding her purse. Beside her stood Dr. Harlan, silver-haired, kind-faced, opening the clinic door. The second photo showed the doctor helping her down the front steps after she had become dizzy. His hand hovered near her back, careful but close. The third photo had been taken from across the street. Elena was getting into a dark sedan. Below the photos was a screenshot of a conversation she had never had. Words arranged like poison. "I can't keep hiding this from him. He'll never know the baby isn't his." Damien read the message again. Elena stared at it, unable to breathe. "That's fake." He said nothing. She looked up. "Damien, that is fake." His eyes were not on her face. They were on her stomach. It was such a small movement. A glance, less than a second. But Elena felt it like a hand around her throat. "Don't," she whispered. He lifted his eyes. There was pain in them, real pain. But pain can become cruel when it refuses to ask where it came from. "Who is he?" She blinked. "What?" "The man." "Dr. Harlan. I told you. You told me Dr. Reeves. I told you Dr. Reeves referred me to him. You didn't tell me you got into his car." "I didn't." His stare sharpened. "The photo says otherwise. The photo shows me getting into a car, my car, with a driver from the clinic because I was lightheaded and they didn't want me walking alone to the parking lot. Convenient." The word landed harder than a shout. Elena took one step back. He saw it. Some part of him saw that he had frightened her. For an instant, regret crossed his face. Then the old wound rose up and swallowed it. The room around him changed. He was no longer standing in a bright kitchen with his pregnant wife. He was 12 years old again, standing barefoot at the top of a staircase in his father's house, listening to his mother break in the room below. He could still remember the sound. Not loud, not dramatic. Just one breath pulled wrong, like someone had reached into her chest and moved her heart out of place. His father had stood near the front door with another woman's perfume on his coat and lies still wet on his tongue. His mother had asked one question. Damien had not understood it then. "How long did you expect me to live beside a stranger?" The next week, a baby appeared in the newspapers. Not officially. Nothing in families like theirs was official unless money made it so. but everyone knew. Men in restaurants stopped speaking when Damien entered. Women at charity lunches looked at his mother with pity, too polished to be kind. His father denied everything until denial became useless. Then he paid people to be quiet and called it handling the situation. Damien learned young that love did not protect anyone. Proof did. Power did. Control did. And if you were foolish enough to trust without evidence, you deserved the knife when it came. Elena did not know the full shape of that memory. He had given her pieces over the years, never the whole wound. Damien did not like anyone seeing where he could bleed. Now that wound looked at her through his eyes. "Ask me," she said. His face did not change. "I am asking." "No, you're not." "Elena, you're building a case." He looked down at the phone again as if the screen had become easier to believe than the woman carrying his child. She reached for the ultrasound envelope on the counter and held it against her chest. "I went to the clinic because I almost fainted on Tuesday. I called you. Malcolm said you were unavailable. I left a message. I never got it. So that means I lied." He said nothing. Elena's eyes stung, but she refused to let tears fall before he earned them. "Do you hear yourself?" "I hear enough." "No. You hear your father. You hear every lie he told your mother. You hear every ghost in this house except me." His eyes flashed. "Don't bring him into this. He has been in this marriage since the day I moved in." The silence after that was dangerous. Outside, a car rolled over the gravel drive. Somewhere in the hall, one of Damien's men spoke into a radio, then went quiet, as if the walls themselves were listening. Damien set the phone on the island. "Tell me the truth." "I have been. Tell me the truth about the baby." Elena stared at him. Her hand moved to her belly, protective now, not tender. "The baby is yours." The words came out steady. Damien wanted to believe them. That was the part that would haunt him later. He wanted to. But fear is a cruel thing. It does not always scream. Sometimes it speaks in a voice that sounds like logic. What if she is lying? What if you are your mother standing there too late? What if everyone knows except you? What if love made you stupid? He looked at the photos again. He looked at the fabricated text. He looked at Elena. Then he said the sentence that split their life in two. "That baby isn't mine." For a moment, nothing moved. Not Elena, not Damien, not even the light. The words seemed to remain in the air between them, too ugly to fall. Elena's face changed slowly, first confusion, then disbelief, then something quieter and far more painful. It was not the face of a woman who had been caught. It was the face of a woman who had just discovered how little her love had protected her from being misjudged. Damien saw it. He saw all of it. Still, he did not take the words back, because taking them back would mean admitting fear had spoken for him. Elena placed the ultrasound envelope on the counter. With careful fingers, she opened it and took out the photo. She laid it beside his phone. A tiny profile. A curved spine. One little hand near the face. Damien stared at it. Elena touched the edge of the image. "I was going to tell you today." Her voice did not break. That made it worse. "You're having a son." Damien's throat moved, but no sound came. She picked up the blue blanket next. For a second, she held it in both hands, looking down at it like it belonged to a future that had vanished while she was still standing in the room. Then she folded it once and tucked it under her arm. Damien took a step forward. "Elena." She lifted her eyes. "No." The word stopped him more effectively than any gun. "You do not get to say my name like you are the wounded one." His face tightened. "I did not say that. You did not have to." She removed her wedding ring. Damien's gaze dropped to her hand. That ring had belonged to his grandmother, not the cruel side of the family. His mother's mother, a woman Elena had never met but had loved through stories. Damien had given it to Elena on a balcony in the French Quarter at midnight with jazz floating up from the street and his voice rough from nerves. Elena had cried when he asked her to marry him. Now she slid the ring from her finger as if removing a thorn. "Elena, don't." She placed it on the marble island. The sound was small, a soft click, barely anything. But Damien would hear it in his sleep for the rest of the season. "If that is what you believe," she said, "then there is nothing left for me to prove." He stared at the ring. "You're leaving because I asked questions. No, I am leaving because you already answered them." She turned toward the hallway. Panic moved in him, then sudden and sharp. He followed her out of the kitchen, but she did not hurry. She walked with the careful balance of a woman in her third trimester, one hand on the banister, the blanket tucked under her arm, her dignity held so tightly it looked like calm. "Elena." She kept walking. "Where will you go?" She stopped near the foot of the staircase and turned. "Somewhere I can breathe. You think I'll let you walk out alone?" Her expression hardened. There he was again. The man who loved through permission. "If one of your men follows me," she said, "I won't run." Her voice lowered. "I will disappear." He believed her. That was what stunned him most. Not that she could leave, not that she was brave enough, but that the gentle woman who read books to children, who cried during old movies, who left notes in his coat pockets when he had hard days, had a kind of steel in her that his world had not created and could not command. A guard appeared at the far end of the hall, uncertain. Damien's eyes moved to him. "Stay where you are." The guard froze. Elena opened the front door. Hot New Orleans air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain, waiting somewhere beyond the clouds. She paused at the threshold. For half a second, Damien thought she might turn back. She did turn, but not with softness. With sorrow. "I loved you in a house full of locked doors," she said. "I told myself it was enough because you always opened them for me." Her eyes moved over his face. "Today I realized they were never really open. You were just the one holding the keys." Then she stepped outside. The door closed behind her. Damien stood in the foyer long after the sound faded. His men remained silent. The house remained perfect. The chandelier glowed. The marble shone. The roses outside kept climbing the walls like nothing had happened. But the mansion had changed. No, that was not true. The mansion had finally shown what it had always been. A beautiful place to lose someone. Hours passed before Damien returned to the kitchen. The coffee Elena had made him sat cold beside the envelope. The ultrasound photo remained on the counter, face up, untouched. The wedding ring caught the light from the window. His phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "Still sure, cross." Damien stared at it until the screen went dark. He should have called her then. He should have run after the car. He should have driven through every street in New Orleans until he found her, fallen to his knees if that was what it took, and asked her to tell him the truth one more time while he listened like a husband instead of a judge. Instead, he stood alone in the kitchen and let pride dress itself as patience. Let her calm down, he told himself. Let the facts come out. Let the test settle this. Those were the words he used. Facts. Test. Truth. Clean words for a filthy wound. That night, Damien did not sleep in their bedroom. He sat in his office with the lights off, watching rain slide down the windows while the city moved below him. Men called. Deals waited. Someone needed approval on a shipment. Someone else wanted permission to pressure a councilman. The Cross Empire continued to breathe. Elena did not call. By morning, Malcolm Reyes stood in the doorway with his hands folded in front of him, watching Damien like a man measuring the distance between a spark and a fire. "Where is she?" Damien did not look away from the window. "Gone. Gone where, if I knew, she would not be gone." Malcolm was quiet for a long moment. What happened? Damien's mouth tightened. She lied. Malcolm did not answer quickly. That was one of the reasons Damien trusted him. Malcolm never rushed into agreement just because fear filled the room. "Did she?" Damien finally turned. "You saw the photos. I saw photos. And I have seen men die because they believed the first thing placed in front of them." Damien's eyes went cold. "Careful." Malcolm lowered his gaze, but not in surrender. "With respect, boss, that is what I am being." The word boss felt wrong in that room. Damien looked at the ultrasound photo on his desk. He had brought it there without remembering doing it. The tiny image rested beside a stack of contracts and a loaded pistol. A son. Maybe his. No, he would not think, maybe. He would not let hope make him weak. "Find out where she went," Damien said. Malcolm's expression shifted. Quietly, Damien paused. Elena's warning returned. "If one of your men follows me, I won't run. I will disappear." He closed his eyes. "No." Malcolm waited. Damien opened them again. "No men, no pressure, no contact unless she asks for something. You want me to do nothing. I want you to start with the clinic. The doctor, the car, the number that sent the messages. And Elena." Damien looked back toward the rain. Elena made her choice. Malcolm's voice softened. "Maybe she did. Maybe you made it for her." Damien did not answer. The days that followed became a punishment he refused to name. Elena's closet still held the scent of her perfume. Her books remained stacked beside the bed. A half-finished novel lay open on the nightstand, a ribbon marking the page. In the bathroom, her hairbrush sat near the sink. In the nursery, the crib had not yet been assembled. The blue paint samples she had taped to the wall curled slightly at the edges. The mansion was full of proof that she had expected to return. That was what hurt most. She had not planned to leave. He had made staying impossible. Still, stubbornness kept him standing in the ruins with his hands clean and his heart clenched. He told himself a faithful woman would have fought harder. Then remembered her face and hated the thought. He told himself an innocent woman would have explained more. Then remembered she had tried. He told himself the test would settle everything. Then avoided ordering it for 2 weeks. Because deep down, beneath the anger, beneath the fear, beneath the boy still standing at the top of his father's staircase, Damien already knew the truth he was not ready to touch. Elena had never looked guilty. She had looked betrayed. When the DNA test was finally arranged through lawyers and hospital records, it did not feel like control. It felt like confession. Damien signed the paperwork in his office without asking where Elena was living. He saw only the name of the state on one document. South Carolina. His pen stopped over the page. South Carolina meant distance. It meant she had crossed state lines. It meant she had not gone to a hotel to punish him for a night. She had chosen a coast far from his gates, his men, his city, his name. For the first time, fear changed shape. It was no longer the fear that Elena had betrayed him. It was the fear that she had survived him. Weeks passed. The test was processed. The Cross Empire grew sharper around him. Men noticed Damien speaking less. Deals closed faster. Punishments came colder. Rivals gave him room. In the city, people said Damien Cross had become more dangerous after his wife left. They were wrong. He had not become more dangerous. He had become emptier. And empty men are often mistaken for cruel ones. Every morning he touched the wedding ring on his desk before leaving for the docks. Every night he told himself he would put it away. He never did. Then, 3 months after Elena walked out of the Garden District mansion with a blue blanket and a broken heart, Malcolm entered Damien's office carrying a white envelope. The rain had returned to New Orleans. The river below was gray. The pocket watch ticked on the desk. Damien looked at the envelope and felt the kitchen rise around him again. Elena's hand on her belly, the ultrasound photo, the ring on marble, his own voice saying the unforgivable. Malcolm placed the report in front of him without a word. Damien stared at it for a long time. His empire waited outside the door. His men waited in the hall. The city waited below. But the only thing that mattered was a sealed envelope and a woman hundreds of miles away who had stopped waiting for him to believe her. The envelope did not scream when Damien opened it. It did not accuse him. It did not beg. It did not weep the way Elena had not allowed herself to weep in the kitchen. It only told the truth. Probability of paternity? 99.99%. For a moment, Damien Cross forgot how to breathe. The office around him blurred at the edges. The rain streaking the windows, the gray Mississippi below the Black River barges moving through the fog. Malcolm standing near the desk with the stillness of a man who already knew the floor was about to fall away. The child was his son. The son Elena had tried to show him with trembling hope in her hands. Damien stared at the page until the ink became meaningless lines. The numbers did not move. The truth did not soften. It sat in his hands as cold and final as a body pulled from the river. He saw Elena again. Not as she had been in his dreams, not as a memory softened by guilt, but exactly as she had stood that morning. Blue dress, bare feet on marble, one hand guarding her belly, her wedding ring catching the kitchen light before she slid it from her finger. "That baby isn't mine." His own voice came back with such cruelty that he nearly flinched. The paper shook between his fingers. Malcolm took one slow step forward. "Damien." He tried to answer, but there was no language left in him. All the words he had used for 3 months to keep himself standing had turned to ash. Evidence, doubt, procedure, protection, lies, every one of them. He lowered himself into the leather chair behind his desk. Not because he chose to sit, but because his legs had stopped trusting him. The wedding ring lay beside the pocket watch exactly where he had kept it since the day she left. He reached for it without thinking, then stopped before his fingers touched the gold. He did not deserve to touch it. Malcolm's phone vibrated. Damien barely heard it at first. The room had become too quiet around the report. Then Malcolm answered, his voice low, his eyes never leaving Damien. "Yes." A pause. When another pause. Damien looked up. Malcolm's expression changed. It was small, but Damien had known him too long to miss it. "What is it?" Malcolm ended the call slowly. "St. Anne's Medical Center in Beaufort." Damien stood so fast the chair struck the wall behind him. "Elena. She was admitted this morning." The paper in Damien's hand crumpled. "The baby." Malcolm's voice softened. "He's coming." For the second time that morning, Damien forgot the room existed. Elena was in a hospital hundreds of miles away, bringing their son into the world without him. She had carried the fear alone. She had crossed state lines alone. She had gone to appointments alone. Now she was facing pain. Blood nurses, bright lights, and the first cry of their child, while he stood in an office above the docks, holding proof of the damage he had caused. "Get the jet ready," Malcolm said. "No." Malcolm blinked. Damien grabbed his coat from the back of the chair. "I'm driving. That is nearly 10 hours. Then I should have left 10 hours ago." He folded the DNA report with care, though his hands were still unsteady, and slipped it inside his coat pocket. At the door, one of his men looked up from the hallway. "Boss, you want cars behind you?" Damien stopped. The old answer would have been yes, always yes. 2 cars, 4 men, weapons close, eyes everywhere, power moving with him like a shadow. But Elena had not asked for a boss. She had asked for trust. "No," Damien said. The guard looked uncertain. "No cars, no men. Nobody follows." Malcolm stepped beside him. "Damien." He turned. Malcolm held his gaze not as an employee, not as a soldier, but as the closest thing Damien had to a brother. "You cannot fix 3 months in one room." Damien's throat tightened. "I know. Then why go?" Damien looked once more at the office, at the ring, at the river, at the city that feared him and could not help him. "Because I should have been there before I needed proof." He walked out into the rain. The highway out of New Orleans stretched beneath a low sky wet and silver. Damien drove with both hands on the wheel, the city lights thinning behind him until the warehouses gave way to dark roads and long miles of open land. His phone sat on the passenger seat. Every few minutes he called Elena. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Her recorded voice filled the car calm and distant. "Hi, this is Elena. Leave a message and I'll call you back when I can." He ended each call before the beep. What could he say in a message? "I believe you now." As if belief arriving late was a gift. "I'm sorry." As if those words were large enough to hold a woman giving birth alone. "Please let me come." As if he still had the right to ask for doors to open. He called the hospital twice. The first nurse told him nothing beyond the fact that Elena was stable. The second told him mother and baby were being monitored. Mother and baby. The words nearly sent him off the road. By midnight, rain had become mist. By dawn, the world outside his windshield turned pale. Gas stations appeared and disappeared. Coffee went cold in paper cups. His eyes burned, but he did not stop longer than necessary. Every mile felt like punishment. Every sign toward South Carolina felt too far away. In the silence, he remembered things he had missed. Elena standing in the nursery with paint samples in her hand. Elena asking if he wanted the crib near the window or the far wall. Elena laughing when the baby kicked during one of Damien's serious phone calls as if even unborn their child had opinions about business. Elena sleeping with one hand under her cheek, her belly curved beneath the blanket. Her face softer than the world deserved. He had thought there would be time. Powerful men always think there will be time because they are used to buying more of everything else. By the time Damien reached Beaufort, the sun was low and gold over the marshes. The town looked nothing like his world. No iron gates, no dark clubs, no men watching corners from parked cars. Just narrow roads. Old houses, Spanish moss, salt air, and boats rocking in quiet water. St. Anne's Medical Center sat near the edge of town, modest and pale against the evening sky. Damien parked badly near the entrance and stepped out before the engine had fully stopped. Inside the lobby smelled of antiseptic coffee and flowers from the gift shop. A woman at the front desk looked up calm in the way only hospital staff could be calm around panic. "Can I help you?" Damien opened his mouth. For a terrifying second, no sound came out. "Elena Cross," he said finally. "Elena Whitmore Cross." The nurse typed her name. Family. The word struck him with more force than any bullet ever had. Family. He had spent years making men afraid to betray his family. Then he had become the one who did it. "I'm her husband." The nurse looked at him for a moment. Maybe she saw the expensive coat, the sleepless eyes, the guilt sitting on his shoulders like wet wool. Maybe Elena had left instructions. Maybe mercy simply moved through her that day. 3rd floor. Maternity. Room 214. Is she all right? The nurse's face softened. She's resting. The elevator ride took less than 30 seconds. It felt longer than the drive. When the doors opened, Damien stepped into a hallway lit by warm lamps. Somewhere nearby, a newborn cried thin and furious, then quieted. A nurse moved past carrying folded blankets. A man in sweatpants slept in a chair with a plastic cup of coffee balanced near his knee. Ordinary people waited in ordinary ways for miracles they had not destroyed first. Damien followed the room numbers. 210, 212, 214. The door was partly open. He stopped outside it, one hand raised but unable to knock. Through the narrow gap, he saw Elena. She sat propped against white pillows, her hair loose over one shoulder, her skin pale with exhaustion. She looked smaller than he remembered, but not weaker. Never weaker. There was a quiet force around her, the kind that did not need to announce itself. In her arms lay a baby wrapped in a gray blanket. Their son. Damien's hand dropped to the doorframe. The world narrowed. He had imagined many things during the drive. Elena refusing to see him. Elena screaming. Elena turning her face away. He had not prepared for this. A tiny face, closed eyes, a soft mouth. One hand curled near the cheek as if holding a secret. Damien felt something inside him break open. Not the violent kind of breaking he understood. No shattering glass. No fist against bone. This was quieter. Deeper. Like a locked room in his chest had finally opened and everything inside had been waiting in the dark. Elena looked down at the baby and smiled. It was faint, tired, beautiful. Damien almost stepped back because he knew he had no right to stand inside that smile. Then Elena sensed him. Her head turned slowly. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke. 3 months entered the room with him. The kitchen, the accusation, the ring, the silence, the unanswered calls, the miles between them, the baby sleeping in her arms who had already lived his first hours without his father. Elena's gaze moved from his face to the pocket of his coat where the folded report showed at the edge. Understanding crossed her features. Not surprise, not satisfaction. Only a wound recognizing the knife that had finally been pulled free. "You found out," she said. Her voice was quiet, rough from labor. Damien stepped into the room. He stayed near the door. "Yes." Elena looked back down at the baby. Good. The word did not forgive him. It did not punish him either. It simply existed. Damien swallowed. "I was wrong." "You were." No anger, no raised voice. Just truth, and because it was truth, he had nowhere to hide. He looked at the baby again. "Is he healthy?" Elena adjusted the blanket. "He's perfect." The answer should have filled him with relief. Instead, it opened another chamber of guilt. Perfect, and he had questioned his right to exist. Perfect, and Damien had allowed a stranger's lie to stain his first place in the world. "What's his name?" Elena's arms tightened almost imperceptibly around the child. For a moment, Damien thought she would not tell him. Then she said, "Noah." His eyes closed. Noah. The name moved through him like prayer. Noah Cross. Elena looked up. Noah Whitmore Cross. Damien opened his eyes. The correction was gentle, but it stood firm. He nodded. "Yes, he should have your name too." Something shifted across Elena's face. Not softness, not trust. Maybe surprise that he had not fought her. The baby made a small sound, and both of them looked at him at once. For one fragile second, they were simply two parents watching their son breathe. Then the past returned. Damien took one step closer, then stopped. "Can I see him?" Elena did not answer immediately. He deserved that hesitation. He deserved worse. She looked at him for a long time, searching for the man who had once held her like she was the safest thing in the world. Whatever she found was not enough to make her hand over the baby. but she angled Noah slightly so Damien could see his face. It was more mercy than he deserved. Damien moved closer, slow and careful, as if approaching a flame. Noah's skin was warm brown and pink, his eyelashes impossibly fine. He had Elena's mouth, Damien's dark hair, a small crease between his brows that made him look annoyed by existence. Damien let out a broken breath. "Hello, Noah." The baby did not wake. Damien's eyes burned. He had not cried when his father died. He had not cried when he took over the family. He had not cried when men he had known for years disappeared from the world one by one. But standing beside a hospital bed looking at the son he had denied, Damien Cross felt tears fall before he could stop them. Elena saw. Her expression did not change. Perhaps once his tears would have moved her. Perhaps once she would have reached for him, wiped them away, told him not to carry pain alone. Now she only watched. That was the cost. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "That's wise." The words hit cleanly. He nodded once because she was right. "I don't know what to say." Elena looked down at Noah. "You always knew what to say when you wanted men to obey you." "This isn't that." "No, it isn't." Silence filled the room. Damien heard the hum of machines, the distant roll of a cart in the hallway, the soft breath of his son. "I should have listened." Elena's eyes lifted. That was the first thing he had said that seemed to reach her. "Yes," she said. "You should have." He forced himself to continue, though every word felt like walking through broken glass. "I let those messages tell me who you were." "No, Damien." He went still. Elena's voice remained low, but there was steel beneath it. "You let them confirm what some part of you already feared." He could not argue. Not honestly. She shifted Noah higher against her chest. The worst part was not the test. His throat tightened. It was not even the accusation. She looked at him then, and he had to stand still beneath it. "It was how fast you believed I could betray you." Damien's mouth opened, but nothing came. Elena's eyes shone, but her voice did not break. "I was carrying your child, standing in our kitchen asking you to hear me, and you looked at me like I was evidence." The sentence cut deeper than rage could have. He lowered his eyes. "I know." "No," she said softly. "You are beginning to know." Noah stirred. Elena kissed his forehead with a tenderness that made Damien ache. He wanted to touch his son. He wanted to touch her shoulder. He wanted to go back into the kitchen and rip the phone from his own hand before the first message opened. But want did not matter. Not anymore. A nurse entered to check Elena's vitals. Damien stepped back immediately. The nurse glanced between them, reading the room without asking questions. Elena answered softly when spoken to. Damien stood near the wall, hands at his sides, feeling useless in a way no empire had prepared him for. After the nurse left, Elena leaned her head back against the pillow. "You should go." The words were quiet. Damien felt them like a door closing. "Can I stay outside?" Her eyes opened. "Why?" He answered honestly, "Because leaving feels like doing it again." Elena studied him. "I'm tired. I know. I don't have strength to manage your guilt." He nodded. "You won't have to." She looked doubtful, and he could not blame her. "I'll sit outside," he said. "No demands, no questions. If you tell the nurses to remove me, I'll go." For a while, Elena said nothing. Then she looked down at Noah. "Do what you want, Damien. You always have." He accepted the blow because it was earned. In the hallway, Damien lowered himself into a plastic chair outside room 214. It was too small for him, too hard, too bright under the hospital lights. He stayed anyway. Hours passed. Nurses moved in and out. A doctor came by. Somewhere a baby cried through the night. An older couple walked past carrying balloons. A young father stepped out of another room and called someone with joy shaking in his voice. Damien sat alone with the DNA report folded in his pocket. At dawn, Malcolm called. Damien answered in a whisper. "Boss." The word sounded wrong again. "I'm here. How is she?" Damien looked toward the closed door. "Stronger than I deserve. And the baby?" Damien closed his eyes. "Beautiful." Malcolm was silent for a moment. "What do you need?" Damien watched a nurse carry a tray down the hallway. "Nothing. That is not an answer you give often." "No." The sun rose slowly beyond the windows at the end of the corridor, turning the hospital floor pale gold. A little later, the door opened. Elena stepped into the hallway wearing a soft cardigan over her hospital gown. She moved carefully, one hand near the wall for balance. Damien stood at once. "You should be resting." She gave him a tired look. "The doctor said walking helps." He nodded and stepped aside, giving her room. They walked slowly down the hall together, not touching. For once, Damien matched someone else's pace. "How is Noah?" he asked. Elena's face softened despite herself. "Hungry? Loud? Perfect." A small smile touched Damien's mouth and vanished. "He has your mouth. He has your frown." Damien looked down. "I'm sorry." Elena stopped walking. The hallway was quiet around them. "You keep apologizing for that morning." He looked at her. "It deserves apology." "Yes," she said. But that morning was not born by itself. Damien frowned slightly. Elena leaned against the wall, tired but steady. "You wanted cameras in every hallway, drivers for every errand, men outside every door. You called it safety. I told myself it was love because loving you was easier than admitting I felt watched." Damien's face tightened. "Elena." "No." "Listen." He went still. She looked toward the window where morning light touched the floor. "You never trusted peace. If something was quiet, you searched for betrayal. If I needed space, you heard rejection. If I disagreed, you heard danger." Her eyes returned to him. The message did not create the crack. It only found it. Damien stood without defense. Every instinct in him wanted to explain, to tell her about his father, his mother, the staircase, the years of humiliation that shaped him. But she knew enough. And even if she knew all of it, none of that would erase what he had done. So he said only, "You're right." Elena looked at him for a long second, as if the absence of argument unsettled her more than anger would have. Then a nurse called her name gently from the doorway. Noah needed her. Of course he did. Everyone who truly mattered needed her, and Damien was only beginning to understand what it meant that she had needed him once. Later that morning, Elena was discharged. Damien carried the small hospital bag because Elena allowed it. Only that. The car seat was already installed in her modest white car. She had done it herself, or someone in town had helped her. The thought stung, but he kept quiet. Outside, Beaufort smelled of salt and warm grass after rain. Sunlight broke through the clouds and settled on the parking lot. Elena buckled Noah into the back seat with careful hands. Damien stood nearby, holding the bag. "Can I help with anything else?" She shut the car door softly. "You already carried the bag." It was polite. Politeness from the woman who once kissed him in doorways felt unbearable. He placed the bag in the trunk. "Elena." She looked at him across the back of the car. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything. That has never stopped you before." He accepted that too. "I want to be his father." Her face changed, but she did not look away. Then learn what that means before you say it like a claim. Damien nodded. I will. Noah does not need a last name with blood on it more than he needs peace. The words struck hard because they were true in ways she could not even fully know. And you? He asked. Elena opened the driver's door. I need time without being cornered by your regret. He stepped back. She sat behind the wheel, then looked up at him through the open door. Do not send men. Do not send gifts I did not ask for. Do not try to buy your way into a home you broke your way out of. I won't. She studied him, measuring the promise. Then she closed the door. Damien watched her drive away with their son sleeping in the back seat. No convoy followed. No orders were given. No one was forced to turn around. The car disappeared beyond the hospital entrance and into the quiet streets of Beaufort. Damien remained in the parking lot long after she was gone. For the first time in his life, there was no enemy to threaten, no deal to make no amount of money large enough to change the thing standing in front of him. Only absence, only consequence, only the thin, painful beginning of understanding that Elena had not taken his family away. He had handed it to grief and called it proof. When Malcolm called again, Damien looked toward the road where Elena had vanished. Do you want me to arrange a flight back? Malcolm asked. Damien watched the South Carolina wind move through the trees. No. Where are you going? Across the street, a small inn faced the harbor. Its sign swung lightly in the breeze. The paint was chipped. The porch sagged a little. It looked nothing like a place Damien Cross belonged. He started walking toward it. I'm staying. Damien Cross had slept in rooms above casinos, in guarded penthouses, in safe houses with steel doors hidden behind bookshelves. He had crossed borders with men willing to die for him and sat across from politicians who smiled while their hands shook under the table. He had lived most of his adult life surrounded by protection. The inn across from the Beaufort harbor offered none of that. His room was on the second floor at the end of a narrow hallway that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old wood. The key was brass, not coated. The lock turned with a tired click. The wallpaper near the window had begun to peel from the salt air, and the bed dipped in the middle as if too many lonely people had slept badly in it. Damien stood inside the doorway for a long time, holding a small overnight bag he had bought from a store near the hospital. He had not packed when he left New Orleans. Men like him did not pack. Men like him had things brought to them. Not this time. Through the window he could see the harbor. Fishing boats rocked in the gray light. A gull cried somewhere above the roof. The town moved at a speed that made no sense to him. No one rushed. No one looked over a shoulder. No one seemed to know that Damien Cross was standing above the street with his empire hundreds of miles behind him and nothing in his hands except regret. His phone rang before he took off his coat. Malcolm. Damien answered without sitting down. Tell me, the lieutenants are asking when you're coming back. Damien looked at the harbor. They can keep asking. Victor Kane is moving. That name usually sharpened something inside him. Tonight it barely reached the surface. Moving how he is trying to get 2 dock foremen to break contract. He thinks your attention is elsewhere. It is. Malcolm went quiet. Damien, I know what he's doing. You also know what happens if he thinks grief made you weak. Damien closed his eyes. Grief. He had not let himself use that word. Grief belonged to funerals, to graves, to mothers clutching photographs. But maybe grief also belonged to hospital parking lots, to newborn sons driven away from fathers who had earned their absence to wedding rings left on marble. I'm not weak, Damien said. No. But you are distracted. Damien opened his eyes. Elena told me not to send men. Not gifts. Not guilt. She said that, yes, and you plan to listen. The question was quiet, but it carried history. Malcolm had watched Damien bend rooms to his will for years. He had watched him solve problems with money, silence pressure, and fear. Listening was not a tool Damien had used often. I plan to try. That will be new. Damien almost smiled, but it died before reaching his mouth. Keep New Orleans steady. Do nothing to Victor unless I say. You want me to do nothing while he reaches for your docks. I want you to watch him. And if he thinks watching means permission. Damien looked at his reflection in the dark window. Expensive coat, hollow eyes. A man who could command violence before breakfast and still could not earn one honest look from the woman he loved. Then let him make mistakes. Malcolm exhaled. You sound different. No, Damien said. I sound tired. He ended the call and placed the phone on the dresser. For the first time in years, no one stood outside his door. No guard, no driver, no armed shadow. Only the thin walls of the inn, the harbor wind, and the memory of Elena saying she needed peace. The next morning, Damien learned how small a town could make a powerful man feel. At the diner below the inn, 3 men in fishing jackets looked at him, once decided he was not from there, and returned to their coffee. A waitress with silver hair called everyone sweetheart and did not lower her voice when she asked if he wanted grits. The coffee was burned, the eggs were overcooked, the chair wobbled. Damien ate everything. Across the street, a woman pushed a stroller along the harbor walk. For one painful second, his heart struck his ribs. But the woman was not Elena. The baby was not Noah. He hated how quickly hope made a fool of him. By noon, old instincts returned. He called a private nursing agency and arranged overnight support for Elena. He ordered a car seat better than the one he had seen in her car. He sent groceries from the best market in town. He paid a florist to deliver white roses because Elena had carried white roses at their wedding. He had his attorney prepare an account for Noah with enough money to keep any child safe for life. Every action felt useful. Every action felt controlled. By late afternoon, everything came back. The flowers first left at the front desk of the inn with the card unopened. The groceries next delivered in paper bags by an annoyed teenage boy who said the lady told him to return them to the man in the black coat. The private nurse called to say Mrs. Cross had declined services. The car seat remained at the store marked refused. Only the diapers did not come back. Tucked into one grocery bag was a folded note. Damien opened it in his room while the harbor darkened outside. Noah can use diapers. I cannot use guilt. He read the sentence once, then again. Then he sat on the edge of the bed and held the paper between both hands. There was no cruelty in it. That was the worst part. Elena had not written to wound him. She had written to place a boundary where he had once placed a command. The next morning he canceled everything. No more deliveries. No more hired help. No more flowers that asked forgiveness without saying the words. He walked the town instead. Beaufort was smaller than New Orleans in every visible way, yet Damien found it harder to understand. People greeted one another by name. Shop owners stepped outside to sweep sidewalks that were already clean. Children crossed streets with backpacks bouncing against their shoulders. At the bakery on King Street, the woman behind the counter asked him if he wanted his usual before he had ever ordered twice. He began to recognize Elena's life by the places that softened when she entered them. The bakery owner set aside oat muffins because Elena liked them. The librarian near the park asked after Noah with real affection. The pharmacist kept infant drops behind the counter because new mothers often forgot what they needed until they needed it badly. The town had made room for Elena in ways Damien never had. That thought followed him for days. He saw her for the first time a week later near the harbor. She was walking slowly with Noah wrapped against her chest in a soft carrier. Her hair was tied back, and the wind had loosened strands around her face. She looked tired, but there was color in her cheeks. She stopped near a bench and looked out across the water while Noah slept against her. Damien stood half a block away beside a closed antique shop. He did not call her name. He did not cross the street. He only watched long enough to know she was safe, then turned around before his wanting became another kind of trespass. That became his rule. If he saw her, he kept his distance unless she saw him first. If she spoke, he answered. If she did not, he left. It sounded simple. It felt like learning a new language with a mouth full of broken glass. 2 weeks passed. New Orleans called every day. Malcolm handled what he could. Men grumbled. Victor Kane circled. Rumors spread along the docks that Damien Cross had gone soft over a woman and a baby. In another life, Damien would have answered those rumors with enough force to make the city remember his name. But in Beaufort, power was useless. He could not threaten a newborn into reaching for him. He could not buy Elena's voice into warmth. He could not order trust to return. One rainy afternoon, he stepped into the pharmacy to buy aspirin and found Elena at the front register. Noah was awake and furious. His cries filled the small store with the impressive rage of a creature who weighed almost nothing and believed the world had failed him. Elena held him against one shoulder while trying to balance a basket full of baby wipes, medicine, and a carton of formula. Her hair was damp from the rain. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. The cashier looked sympathetic but overwhelmed. Damien stopped near the end of the aisle. Every part of him wanted to move quickly, to take the basket, to lift Noah gently from her arms, to fix the problem. Instead, he stayed where she could see him. Elena. She turned. Surprise crossed her face, followed by caution. Noah cried harder. Damien kept his voice low. "May I help?" Her eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with the effort of measuring him. "I have it. I know." She looked at the basket slipping against her wrist. Noah kicked and wailed. The cashier pretended not to listen. Damien waited. Elena's pride fought with her exhaustion. He could see it. He knew that fight because he had caused too much of it. Finally, without a word, she held out the basket. Not the baby. The basket. Damien took it as carefully as if she had handed him Noah himself. They finished at the register in silence. Outside, rain tapped against the awning in a steady rhythm. Damien carried the bag to her car while Elena buckled Noah into the back seat. The baby's cries softened into hiccups. Damien placed the bag in the trunk and stepped back. Elena shut Noah's door and turned toward him. "Thank you." Polite again, but not cold. "You're welcome." For a moment, neither moved. Then Noah made a small sound through the window. Damien looked down. A tiny hand pressed against the glass from inside the car seat, fingers opening and closing with no purpose except life. Damien forgot the rain. Elena saw it too. Her expression changed so quickly he might have missed it once. Pain, fear, softness, all of it gone in a breath. She opened the driver's door. "Goodbye, Damien. Goodbye, Elena." She drove away through the rain. Damien remained under the awning until the pharmacist came outside and asked if he was all right. He said yes. It was a lie, but a smaller one than he used to tell. That night, Malcolm called after midnight. Damien answered from the balcony of his room. Fog rolled over the harbor, blurring the lights on the water. "What did you find?" Malcolm did not waste time. The anonymous messages came through a chain of burner accounts. Whoever sent them wanted us to think it was a jealous lover or someone from Elena's past. Damien's hand tightened around the railing. It wasn't. No. The payment trail leads to a consulting firm registered in Mobile. That firm received money from a holding company tied to Victor Kane. The fog seemed to thicken. Damien said nothing. Malcolm continued. The clinic photos were real. The text messages were fabricated. The third photo was cropped. Elena was getting into a clinic transport car. We found the driver. Damien closed his eyes. Elena had told him. Exactly that. She had told him in the kitchen while he stood there, turning fear into judgment. Victor knew, Malcolm said. Knew what? Knew about your father. Knew about the scandal. Knew what kind of accusation would make you stop thinking. Damien opened his eyes and looked toward the dark town where Elena and Noah slept somewhere beyond his reach. Victor had not created the wound. He had only pressed his thumb into it. Do we have enough? To expose him, yes. To ruin him, not yet. Damien was quiet. Malcolm's voice lowered. If you want blood, say so. The old world waited inside that sentence. Men could be sent. Cars could disappear into the night. Victor Kane could learn that Damien Cross still owned fear. It would be easy. Easier than waiting outside a hospital room. Easier than carrying a basket of baby supplies while the woman he loved decided whether he was safe to stand near. For a moment, Damien saw it. Victor dragged into a warehouse near the river. Malcolm watching the door. The truth pulled from him with pain instead of paperwork. Then Damien heard Elena's voice. I need peace. He released the railing. No. Malcolm was silent. No, not like that. He nearly destroyed your family. Damien looked toward the harbor. I did that. You did not fake the messages. No. I believed them. The words settled between them. Damien spoke again before Malcolm could answer. Build the case. Follow the money. Get the driver's statement. Get the clinic security footage. I want Victor finished in daylight. You sure? No bodies. No midnight lesson. No river. Malcolm's voice changed softer with something like approval. Understood. After the call ended, Damien stood outside until the damp air soaked through his shirt. The next morning he walked to the community library. It was a small brick building beside a park with children's drawings taped in the front windows and a return box shaped like a red schoolhouse. Inside, the air smelled of paper floor polish and coffee from somewhere behind the desk. A librarian looked up. Can I help you? Damien removed his coat. I'd like to make a donation. Her smile brightened with the practiced gratitude of someone used to small checks. That's very kind. We have a form. I don't need my name on anything. She paused. How much were you thinking? Damien looked toward the children's corner. A shelf sagged beneath picture books. One chair had tape around the leg. A faded poster announced a family reading night that had already passed. What do you need? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Well, the roof leaks near the back room. We've been trying to restart the evening literacy program, but childcare is difficult for some parents. The children's section could use new books. We lost funding for summer reading last year. Damien listened. Really listened. Then he paid for all of it. Not with a speech, not with a plaque, not with the cross name shining over the door like another claim. Just paperwork, signatures, and a request that no one announce it. When the librarian asked why Damien looked at a framed photograph near the desk, Elena stood in it smiling among children holding books. Her hand rested on the shoulder of a little girl missing 2 front teeth. She loves this place, he said. The librarian studied him for a long moment. Then her expression softened, but she did not ask more. After that, Damien began noticing what the town needed. A broken bench near the harbor where mothers rested with strollers. A street lamp that flickered outside the community center. A leaking roof above a room where elderly men played cards on Thursday afternoons. A scholarship fund at the clinic for prenatal visits women could not afford. He paid quietly, sometimes with checks, sometimes through Malcolm, sometimes in cash placed in envelopes with no name. He told no one, but small towns have ears. And Elena had always known how to hear the truth behind silence. One afternoon, nearly a month after Noah's birth, Damien entered the bakery on King Street just as the lunch crowd thinned. The bell over the door rang softly. Warm air carried the smell of cinnamon butter and fresh bread. Elena sat by the window. Noah slept in a stroller beside her, one tiny fist near his cheek. A half-finished cup of tea sat near her hand. She looked up when Damien entered. He stopped. For a second, the old ache opened in him. Not sharp this time. Deep. "I can leave," he said. Elena looked at the empty chair across from her. "You can sit." Damien did not move. She raised an eyebrow. "I said sit, Damien, not take over the town." A breath left him almost a laugh, but gentler. He crossed the bakery and sat down slowly. The chair scraped against the floor. Noah slept on. Neither spoke at first. Outside, people passed beneath the bright afternoon sky. A woman carried flowers from the shop next door. A boy rode by on a bicycle, one hand off the handlebars, careless with joy. Elena wrapped both hands around her cup. "People talk here. I've noticed. They talk about you." Damien looked down at the table. "I know. They said the library roof is being fixed." He said nothing. "And the street lamp near the community center." Still nothing. "And Mrs. Keller told me someone paid for her daughter's prenatal bills after her husband lost work." Damien's jaw tightened with discomfort. "I didn't tell them to tell you." "I know." That made him look up. Elena's face was calm, but something in her eyes had shifted. Not trust, not yet, but attention. "That's why I listened," she said. Noah stirred in the stroller, making a soft sound. Elena reached down at once, brushing her fingers over the blanket. The baby settled. Damien watched her hand, the tenderness in it, the ease. He had once thought family meant protection from outside danger. He had never understood how much family was built in tiny gestures no one else noticed. Elena looked back at him. "Why are you doing it?" Damien could have said, "Because of you. Because I am sorry. Because I want another chance." All of those were true, and all of them felt too small, so he gave her the answer he had not planned. "Because for most of my life, I only knew how to take care of things I owned." Elena's gaze held his. "I don't own this town. I don't own you. I don't own Noah." The name trembled slightly in his voice, but he did not look away. "I'm trying to learn what care looks like when it doesn't come with control." The bakery noise seemed to fade around them. Elena looked down at her tea. For the first time in weeks, she did not answer with a boundary. She sat with his words. And Damien, who had once filled silence with commands, let the silence remain. Elena sat across from Damien in the bakery and let the silence stretch between them. Not long ago, silence with him had felt like a locked room. Now it felt different. Still heavy, still fragile, but no longer dangerous. Damien did not lean forward. He did not reach for her hand. He did not fill the space with promises, and that restraint unsettled her more than any apology could have. Outside the window, Beaufort moved through the afternoon in soft colors. Sunlight touched the brick sidewalk. A woman pushed a stroller past the flower shop. Two fishermen stood near a pickup truck laughing about something Elena could not hear. The world looked ordinary, and yet Elena knew ordinary things could carry the deepest ache. Noah shifted in his stroller, his tiny mouth opening in a sleepy yawn. Damien watched him, but he did not ask to hold him. That too was new. Elena looked down at her tea. "When I first came here, I thought I was grieving our marriage." Damien's eyes returned to her face. She kept her voice low, not because she wanted to protect him, but because the truth felt more bearable when spoken gently. "I thought I was grieving the house, the plans, the nursery, the version of us I thought we were building." Her fingers moved around the warm cup. "But after a while I realized I was grieving the man I thought I had married." Damien did not flinch, but something in his face went still. Elena looked at him then. "The man I believed in would have asked me what happened. He would have looked at me before he looked at a stranger's message. He would have known my voice from a lie." The words sat between them, quiet and sharp. Damien lowered his gaze. I killed that version of me in your eyes. You did. He nodded once. No defense, no wounded pride, no attempt to make his pain louder than hers. Elena hated that it mattered. She hated that his silence was beginning to feel like change. I'm trying to become someone better, he said. No. His eyes lifted. Elena held his gaze. Don't become someone else just because guilt scared you. Become honest enough to face who you already were. For a moment, the bakery faded around them. Damien looked as if she had placed a mirror in front of him, and for once he did not turn away. I was afraid, he said. I know. That doesn't excuse it. No, it doesn't. He pressed his thumb against the edge of the table hard enough that his knuckle paled. My father taught me that betrayal always comes from inside the house. Elena's expression softened, but only a little. And you brought that lesson into our home. Yes, you made me pay for a crime I never committed. His voice dropped. Yes. Noah stirred again. Elena reached down, adjusted his blanket, and watched his face relax. When she looked back at Damien, his eyes were wet, but he did not use the tears. He did not make them her responsibility. That was new, too. I don't know how to trust this, she admitted. I know. You were sorry the night you came to the hospital. But sorry can be selfish. Sorry can mean you want relief. Damien looked at Noah. I don't want relief if it costs you peace. Elena studied him. Once a sentence like that from Damien would have sounded beautiful enough to believe. Now she listened for the weight behind it, for the place where words met action. The bell over the bakery door rang. A couple came in laughing, shaking the wind from their jackets. Elena turned her cup slowly. There's a farmer's market Saturday. Damien's face changed careful and almost startled. Elena kept her voice even. Noah likes music. Or maybe he just likes noise. It's hard to tell. Damien did not move. Are you asking me to come? I'm saying you may. His breath left him slowly. Thank you. Don't make it bigger than it is. I won't. Elena raised an eyebrow. You're already making it bigger than it is. That brought the smallest smile to his face. Then I'll try quietly. She looked away before her own mouth could soften. Outside, the afternoon light shifted on the window glass. For the first time since the hospital, Elena did not feel the urge to leave immediately. That frightened her. Saturday came clear and bright with a salty breeze blowing in from the water. The farmer's market filled the town square with striped tents, baskets of peaches, jars of honey, fresh bread, and flowers wrapped in brown paper. A small band played near the harbor banjo and fiddle, carrying through the warm air. Damien arrived early. He told himself it was because he did not want Elena waiting. The truth was simpler. He was nervous. He had faced judges, killers, senators, and traitors without a tremor in his hand. Yet standing beside a booth stacked with homemade jam, waiting for a woman with a baby stroller, made his pulse behave like it belonged to a younger, more honest man. Then he saw them. Elena moved through the crowd in a white cotton dress, one hand on Noah's stroller, her hair lifting in the wind. Noah wore a small blue hat that sat crooked over one ear. Elena looked down to fix it, smiling at her son with an ease that made Damien's chest ache. She was beautiful, but that was not what stopped him. She looked alive, not restored, not untouched, but alive in a way that did not depend on him. When she reached him, Damien kept his hands at his sides. Morning. Elena glanced at the jam booth. You're early. I was afraid of being late. That sounds almost normal. I'm trying new things. Noah made a small, excited noise from the stroller. Damien crouched, keeping distance. Good morning, Noah. Noah blinked at him, then waved one unsteady fist. Damien smiled before he could stop himself. Elena saw it. She did not look away. They walked through the market together slowly without trying to name what they were doing. Elena bought apples. Damien carried them because she handed him the bag without ceremony. Noah kicked his feet whenever the music grew louder. At one booth, an older woman selling quilts looked at Damien for too long, then smiled at Elena like she knew more than she should. Small towns did not need cameras. They had eyes. For a while it was almost easy. Then Damien's phone vibrated. He ignored it. It vibrated again. Elena noticed. "You can check it. I don't need to. You don't have to perform peace for me." The sentence stung because it was fair. Damien took out the phone. Unknown number. His body remembered before his mind did. Cold moved through him. The market noise thinned. The band blurred into distant sound. The smell of peaches and bread turned sickly sweet. He opened the message. A photograph filled the screen. Elena stood outside a legal office near the courthouse. Dr. Harlan was beside her, holding a folder. His hand was extended toward her as if he had just given her something. The angle was intimate enough to be made ugly by someone who wanted it ugly. Below it, a line of text appeared. "Some men never learn." Damien stared at the screen. The first instinct came like a match to dry wood. Ask who took the photo. Ask why she was with him. Ask why she had not told him. Ask whether anything had ever been true. His hand tightened around the phone. Elena was looking at him now. "What is it?" He heard her voice from the kitchen. "Ask me, Damien." He saw the blue dress, the ultrasound, the ring on marble. His son, asleep in a hospital room he had reached too late. The old fear rose familiar and poisonous, but this time Damien did not obey it. He turned the phone toward her. Not like evidence, like confession. "I got this." Elena looked at the photo. Her face went pale. Damien saw pain move through her eyes before anger reached them, not because she had been caught, because she was being placed back inside the room where he had once failed her. And she asked. The single word carried everything. Damien put the phone away. "And I'm asking before my fear decides it already knows." Elena stared at him. The market moved around them. A child laughed near the flower stall. The band kept playing. Noah kicked softly in his stroller, unaware that both his parents were standing inside the echo of the moment that had almost destroyed them. Elena's voice was careful. Dr. Harlan signed a medical statement for Noah's birth records. My lawyer needed it. That's why I was there. Damien nodded. Okay, that's it. That's it. You believe me? He looked at her fully. Yes. Her eyes searched his face, looking for the old suspicion, the hidden courtroom, the sentence waiting behind his teeth. She did not find it. The anger in her face trembled and became something more dangerous. Hope. Elena looked away first. I shouldn't have to feel grateful because my husband asked instead of accused. No, Damien said. You shouldn't. But I do. His throat tightened. Elena. She shook her head. Don't. He stopped. She gripped the stroller handle and looked toward the harbor. Her breathing was steady, but her eyes glistened. That moment in the kitchen has lived in me for months. I hate that it still has power. I hate that one photo can make my chest feel like I'm standing there again. Damien stepped closer, then stopped when her shoulders tightened. I'm sorry. I know. The words were not forgiveness, but they were not rejection either. Noah made a fussy sound. Elena bent to adjust him. Damien stood beside them, phone heavy in his pocket, anger beginning to turn its face toward the right target. Not Elena. Never Elena again. That evening, Damien drove back to New Orleans alone. He did not tell Elena where he was going until she asked. He did not bring men to Beaufort. He did not move like a wounded king seeking blood. He drove through the night with Malcolm on speaker, the phone resting in the cup holder as the road unspooled beneath the headlights. "Victor sent another one," Damien said. "I assumed he would. You assumed men like Victor mistake restraint for weakness. It makes them careless." Damien watched the dark highway. "Do we have him enough to hurt him, not enough to end him clean? Then get enough." Malcolm was quiet for a beat. "You still want daylight?" "Yes. No river, no river. No warehouse, no warehouse." Malcolm gave a low sound that might have been a laugh. "You are becoming difficult in a new way. I'm tired of being easy to manipulate." By sunrise, Damien was in New Orleans. The city smelled of rain, river water, diesel, and old sin. It welcomed him back like it had been waiting to see which version of him returned. At the Cross office near the docks, Malcolm had spread the evidence across a long conference table. Bank transfers, shell companies, clinic security footage, a sworn statement from the transport driver, metadata from altered photographs, copies of messages routed through accounts tied to Victor Kane's consulting network. Damien stood over the table and looked at the shape of the trap. It was almost elegant. That made him hate it more. Victor had never needed Elena to be guilty. He had only needed Damien to be wounded enough to stop listening. Malcolm watched him from the other side of the table. "Old, you would have had him taken by now." Damien picked up one of the photos. Elena outside the clinic, dizzy and pregnant, trusting the world enough to accept a doctor's help. He set it down carefully. Old me already punished the wrong person. By noon, attorneys were in the room. By afternoon, Port Authority officials received documents that made Victor's legitimate contracts tremble. By evening, financial investigators had the first trail of illegal payments. Damien did not raise his voice once. That frightened people more than anger would have. Victor Kane requested a meeting at a private club near the river just after dark. Damien agreed. Malcolm did not like it, but he came with him. The club was old, New Orleans, low lights, dark wood, brass fixtures, and jazz playing from a corner where no one was really listening. Victor sat in a booth near the back, dressed in a gray suit, smiling like a man who believed charm could still buy time. "Cross," Victor said. "You look rested." Damien sat across from him. Malcolm remained standing. Victor's eyes flicked to him. "No guns on the table. I'm almost disappointed." Damien looked at him without expression. "I know what you did." Victor smiled wider. People always say that when they know less than they think. Damien placed one folder on the table. Victor did not open it. His smile thinned. Damien leaned back. "You used my father's scandal because you thought I was still that boy in the hallway." Victor's face shifted before he caught it. There it was. "Enough," Damien continued. "You thought I'd go to war with my wife first, then with you. You thought grief would make me sloppy." Victor lifted his glass. "Didn't it?" The question moved through Damien like a blade, but he did not bleed for Victor. "Yes," he said. Victor's brows rose. Damien's voice stayed calm. "It made me sloppy with the only person who mattered. I won't make that mistake twice." Victor set the glass down. "You think paperwork can hurt me?" "No." Damien stood. "Truth can." Victor laughed, but the sound was thinner now. "You sound like a priest." Damien looked at him one last time. "No. I sound like a man you failed to keep stupid." He left the folder on the table and walked out. Behind him, Victor did not laugh again. Damien returned to Beaufort the next morning. He had not slept. His shirt was wrinkled, his jaw unshaven, his eyes shadowed. Elena noticed all of it when she opened her cottage door. Noah was on her hip, chewing on the corner of a soft cloth book. "You look awful," she said. Damien almost smiled. I've been told worse. By people who survived some. She stepped onto the porch and closed the door halfway behind her. What happened? He told her. Not all of it, not the parts of his world she had never wanted, but enough. Victor, the shell companies, the fabricated messages, the legal case, the meeting. Elena listened without interrupting. When he finished, she looked toward the marsh beyond the road. So he admitted it. Not directly, but he did it. Yes. She nodded slowly. I thought hearing that would make me feel clean. Damien looked at her. Does it know? Noah dropped the cloth book. Damien bent, picked it up, and held it out. Elena let him give it back. Their fingers did not touch, but the space between them did not feel as sharp. He was never the real problem, she said. Damien held her gaze. No, he wasn't. The honesty settled on the porch with the morning light. Noah reached toward Damien's coat button. Elena noticed. After a moment, she shifted the baby slightly closer. Damien did not move until she gave a small nod. He lifted one hand and let Noah wrap tiny fingers around his thumb. The touch was impossibly small. It nearly undid him. Later that week, the farmer's market returned under a sky full of soft clouds. Elena came with Noah in the stroller. Damien met them near the same jam booth, but this time he carried a folder under one arm. Elena noticed immediately. That looks serious. It is. Her expression guarded itself. Damien, it's not a gift. That's what men say before handing women things with strings attached. He absorbed that. You can read it before deciding if there are strings. They walked to a bench near the edge of the square. Music drifted from the bandstand. Noah slept in the stroller, one hand resting open on the blanket. Damien handed her the folder. Elena opened it carefully. The first pages concerned Noah. A trust established in his name protected from cross-family assets untouchable by Damien's business partners, lieutenants, or enemies. The next pages gave Elena full authority over Noah's medical care school decisions and residence unless she chose otherwise. More pages followed. Legal separation of legitimate shipping holdings from criminal networks. Independent oversight. A written agreement that Damien would not use his men, money, name, or influence to pressure Elena's choices. Elena read in silence. The longer she read, the more her face changed. When she looked up, her eyes were bright. Why are you doing this? Damien sat beside her, leaving space between them. Because trust should not depend on whether I'm in a good mood. She looked down at the folder again. I don't understand. For most of my life, I asked people to trust me while making sure they had no choice. He looked toward the harbor. I did that to you too. I called it protection. I called it love. But if you had to depend on my mercy to be free, then you were never free. Elena's fingers tightened around the pages. These papers don't fix what happened. No, they don't make me stop hearing what you said. I know. They don't make you safe overnight. He turned back to her. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to make sure you don't have to gamble your peace on my promises. For a long time, Elena said nothing. The music played. Noah slept. People moved around them, buying bread and flowers, arguing softly over peaches, living ordinary lives in the middle of their fragile one. Elena closed the folder. I'm still hurt. Damien nodded. I know. Some days I still wake up angry. You should. Some days I miss you and hate myself for it. His breath caught, but he did not reach for her. Elena looked at him then, and for the first time she let him see the conflict in her face. Love had not vanished. Pain had not either. They stood together inside her, neither willing to leave. I don't know what happens to us, she said. Damien's voice was rough. Neither do I. That scares me. Me too. The answer surprised her. Damien Cross had once treated uncertainty like an enemy. Now he sat beside her inside it, hands open, waiting without demanding the ending. Elena looked down at his hand, resting on the bench. Slowly, carefully, she placed her hand over his. Damien went completely still. Her touch was light, not a promise, not surrender, not the return of everything they had lost. But it was real. Damien looked at their hands, then at her. Elena's eyes remained on the harbor. "Don't make me regret this," she said. He turned his hand beneath hers, not gripping, only receiving. "I won't." Noah stirred in the stroller and made a soft sound between sleep and waking. Elena did not pull her hand away. For a few quiet minutes, under the cloud-softened light of the Beaufort market, the feared boss of New Orleans sat beside the woman he had wounded, holding no power over her at all. And somehow, that was the closest he had felt to being forgiven. Winter came quietly to Beaufort. It did not arrive with the violence of a New Orleans storm, or the heavy heat that made the Mississippi smell like iron and rain. It slipped in through salt wind, pale mornings, and frost along the harbor rails. The tourist boats disappeared first. Then the outdoor tables vanished from the sidewalks. Christmas lights appeared in shop windows, glowing softly against glass fogged by the cold. Damien rented a small cottage 2 streets from the water. It had white siding, a sagging porch, and a front door that stuck when the air turned damp. The kitchen was too small for a man used to dining rooms that seated 20. The bedroom window rattled when the wind came off the marsh. The furnace clicked all night like it was arguing with itself. Damien loved none of it, but he stayed. Not because Elena asked him to. She had not. Not because Noah needed him there every day. He had not earned that yet. He stayed because leaving would have been easier, and for once he did not trust the easy thing. New Orleans still called. Malcolm handled what he could, and Damien drove back when he had to. The first few trips were tense. Men watched him differently. Some with doubt, some with curiosity. A few with the thin disrespect that appears when violent men mistake restraint for weakness. Damien noticed all of it. He let them notice him noticing. That was usually enough. When it was not, Malcolm reminded them that a man could choose not to spill blood and still remember how. But even on the days Damien returned to the city, he came back to Beaufort before the weekend. Sometimes near midnight. Sometimes with his shirt wrinkled and his eyes bloodshot. Sometimes with rainwater still on his coat. He would park outside his cottage, sit in the dark for a few minutes, and look toward the quiet road that led to Elena's house. He never went there uninvited. That was one of the first things he learned. Love was not arriving just because he missed her. Love was waiting until his presence was welcome. The second thing he learned was that babies did not care about reputations. Noah cried with the confidence of a tiny king. He did not care that his father had once made dock bosses tremble. He did not care that men in New Orleans lowered their voices when Damien entered a room. If his bottle was not warm enough, he screamed. If his blanket twisted under his leg, he screamed. If Damien made the mistake of sitting down after pacing for 40 minutes, Noah screamed as if betrayed by a trusted nation. The first time Elena let Damien stay for an hour while she showered, he treated the responsibility like a peace negotiation. Noah stared at him from the small bassinet in the living room. Damien stared back. "You and I," Damien said softly, "are going to remain calm." Noah hiccuped. "That's agreement enough." 3 minutes later, Noah began to wail. Damien tried the bottle. Noah rejected it with offense. He tried rocking. Noah arched his back like a man escaping capture. He tried humming, but the only tune that came to mind was a funeral song his grandmother used to play on Sundays. Noah cried harder. Elena stepped out of the hallway in a robe, hair damp, trying and failing not to smile. What happened to calm Damien looked at her. Noah red-faced in his arms. He violated negotiations. Elena laughed. The sound filled the little house so suddenly, Damien almost forgot the baby was crying. Then Elena came close, showed him how to hold Noah higher against his shoulder, how to sway with small steps, how to pat gently instead of like he was trying to restart a machine. Noah quieted. Damien looked down at him, stunned. Elena watched Damien's face soften. "You were holding him like he owed you information," she said. "I was under pressure. He weighs 12 pounds. He has influence." She laughed again, softer this time. Damien did not move. Noah's warm weight settled against his chest, small breaths brushing his collar. Something inside him loosened, painfully. He had spent most of his life holding power. This felt more dangerous. Weeks passed in small permissions. Elena allowed him to bring soup when she caught a cold, but only after he texted first. She let him push Noah's stroller during a harbor walk, but she stayed beside them. She let him sit on the floor while Noah practiced rolling over, though she reminded him not to make every milestone sound like a corporate achievement. He turned halfway over. Damien said one afternoon, watching Noah kick on a quilt. Elena folded tiny clothes on the couch. "Yes. That shows determination. That shows gravity. He has focus. He has feet he just discovered." Damien looked down as Noah grabbed his own sock with deep concentration. "He is advanced." Elena shook her head, but she was smiling. Those smiles came more often now, though never when Damien tried too hard. If he brought expensive flowers, she thanked him and put them in the kitchen without much feeling. If he remembered her favorite tea from the grocery store, her eyes softened. If he told her she looked beautiful, she grew careful. If he took the trash out without being asked, she looked at him like she had found something real. So he learned. Grand gestures were often just pride dressed in silk. Ordinary care had no audience. One evening in December, snow fell over Beaufort in a thin, hesitant dusting that made the whole town seem surprised. Elena had gone to the grocery store while Damien stayed with Noah. She had only meant to be gone 20 minutes, but the road slowed, and by the time she returned, the cottage windows glowed amber against the dark. She opened the door quietly and stopped. Damien sat on the living room floor with Noah propped against his chest. Around them lay a mess of picture books from the community library. One book was upside down in Damien's hand. He was reading it with complete seriousness, giving each animal a different voice. The duck sounded like a crime witness. The cow sounded like Malcolm. Noah was fascinated. Elena leaned against the doorway, grocery bags hanging from both hands. Damien looked up. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough to know you should never perform in public." Noah made a happy noise. Damien looked down at him. "He disagrees. He eats paper. He has taste." Elena came inside, smiling. She set the bags on the kitchen counter and stood there for a moment longer than necessary, watching them. There had been a time when this scene would have broken her because of how badly she wanted it. Now it frightened her because it no longer felt impossible. Later, after Noah fell asleep upstairs, Elena sat at the kitchen table sorting papers. Bills, clinic forms, library schedules, a recipe card from a neighbor. Damien stood at the sink, washing bottles, sleeves rolled up, moving with the careful focus of a man handling fragile evidence. Elena opened a small drawer and found the old library card. Her mother's card. The edges were faded, the blue ink worn nearly gray. The corners had softened from years in Elena's wallet, years in coat pockets, years carried from one version of life into another. Damien noticed the change in her face. "You still keep it with you." Elena touched the card with her thumb. "Always." He dried his hands on a towel and came closer, but not too close. "You told me once your mother loved libraries." "She did." Elena smiled faintly. "She said a library card was proof that even if you had nothing, you still had somewhere to go." Damien looked at the card. "That sounds like her." "You never met her?" "No. But I know what she gave you." Elena looked up. The words had not been polished. That was why they reached her. She turned the card over. She used to say trust was like borrowing a book. Damien waited. You receive something valuable. You take care of it. You return it in better condition if you can. Her smile faded. And if you damage it, you don't get angry when the owner hesitates to hand you another one. Damien lowered his eyes. I damaged more than I understood. Yes. No cruelty. No comfort. Just the truth sitting calmly at the kitchen table between them. After a moment, Elena placed the card beside his hand. He did not touch it. She noticed. You can. Damien looked at her. Are you sure? Elena nodded. He picked up the card with the care of a man touching a sacred thing. For years, his world had taught him that valuable objects were heavy. Gold, guns, contracts, keys to warehouses, names written in ledgers. This card weighed almost nothing. Still, his throat tightened. Elena watched him hold it. My mother also said families break in private long before anyone sees the pieces. Damien looked at her. And what did she say after that? Elena leaned back in her chair. She said, rebuilding is not pretending nothing happened. It is choosing where each piece belongs now. The house grew quiet around them. Upstairs, Noah made a soft sound in his sleep, then settled. Damien placed the card back on the table closer to Elena than to himself. I don't want to be the piece that cuts you again. Her eyes stayed on him. Then don't. Spring came with warmer rain and yellow flowers along the roadsides. The marsh brightened, the harbor filled again. Children returned to the park beside the library running over wet grass, while parents called after them with the tired devotion of people who had said the same names too many times and would say them forever. By then, Damien had become a strange but accepted part of Beaufort. He repaired a shelf at the library and did it badly enough that 3 children corrected him. He showed up at the diner every Friday and ordered coffee no one could convince him was good. He carried boxes for the literacy program and listened while the librarian explained where everything belonged. He let old Mrs. Keller tell him he looked too thin and then ate the biscuit she put in his hand, like he had been given an order from a higher authority. Elena noticed all of it. Not because people told her, though they did. Because Damien no longer seemed to be performing. He was simply there. One afternoon, she arrived at the library with Noah on her hip and found Damien sitting cross-legged on the children's rug, assembling a small bookshelf while 4 toddlers surrounded him with opinions. A little boy pointed at the side panel. That part goes there. Damien studied it. Are you sure? Yes. A little girl shook her head. No, it goes upside down. Damien nodded gravely. I see we have a leadership dispute. Elena covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Damien looked over and caught her. The smile that passed between them was small but easy. Later that evening, they walked along the harbor with Noah asleep in the stroller. Sunset spread gold across the water. Boats creaked against their ropes. A breeze moved through Elena's hair, and Damien kept his hands in his coat pockets so he would not reach for her without permission. Malcolm called, he said. Elena glanced at him. Everything all right? Yes. Victor agreed to a settlement. His port contracts are gone. The holding company admitted to funding the fabricated evidence. Elena listened her gaze on the water. For months the name Victor Kane had carried weight. Now as the waves tapped against the dock posts, it sounded smaller than she expected. So it's over, she said. That part is. She nodded slowly. I thought hearing that would feel different. So did I. She stopped walking. Damien stopped too. Elena looked out at the harbor. He lit the match. Damien's voice was quiet. I left the house full of gas. She looked at him then. There was no performance in his face, no attempt to be poetic. He meant it plainly, and the plainness mattered. "You were the wound," she said. He accepted it. "Yes." She studied him for a long moment. "You don't have to stay the wound." The words entered him slowly. He looked away because if he kept looking at her, he might ask for too much. Noah shifted in the stroller, kicking the blanket loose. Damien bent and tucked it back around him. Elena watched his hands, careful and practiced now. That night, when they reached her cottage, Elena did not invite him in right away. She stood on the porch with one hand on the stroller handle. Damien prepared himself for goodbye. Instead, she took her mother's library card from her purse. The worn card rested in her palm. Damien looked at it, then at her. "Elena." She stepped closer and slipped it into the breast pocket of his coat. His breath caught. "I'm not giving it to you," she said. He looked down at the pocket. "I know. I'm sharing it." The porch light glowed behind her. Noah slept between them. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and went quiet. Damien's voice was rough. "I'll take care of it." "I know." The words were soft. They were also the first time she had said that sentence without pain hiding behind it. Summer arrived almost 1 year after Elena had driven into Beaufort with swollen feet, a suitcase, and a heart she had been too proud to call broken. The annual library festival filled the park with tents folding chairs, lemonade music, and children running barefoot through the grass despite every adult telling them not to. Elena stood near the entrance helping organize books by age group. Noah, now walking with fierce uncertainty, toddled across the lawn toward Damien, who crouched with both arms open. Noah fell halfway there. Damien moved instantly, then stopped himself when Noah pushed up on his own, offended but determined. Elena saw Damien hold back. That mattered. Noah reached him and grabbed his jacket. "Da!" The word was small, barely formed. But Damien froze as if the whole park had gone silent. Elena's eyes filled before she could stop them. Damien looked at Noah, then at Elena, asking without words if he had heard correctly. She nodded. He picked Noah up slowly and held him close, his eyes closed against the top of his son's head. For a moment, Elena saw the man from the kitchen, the man from the hospital, the man from the inn, the man on the library floor, all folded into this one father, holding a child who did not know how much had been survived to reach his arms. After the festival, when the crowd thinned and the sky turned soft with evening, Elena found Damien sitting on the harbor bench. Noah slept in his stroller beside him, one hand curled around a cloth book. Elena sat down. Neither spoke for a while. The silence between them had changed again. It was not empty. It was full of everything they no longer needed to defend. Damien looked toward the water. "Do you ever think about how different everything could have been?" Elena followed his gaze. "Sometimes. I almost lost all of this." She reached for his hand. This time, she did not hesitate. "But you didn't. Because you gave me a chance." She shook her head. "Because you chose to become someone who could be trusted with one." He looked at their hands. "Do you trust me now?" Elena watched the lighthouse in the distance begin to glow against the darkening sky. "I trust who you keep choosing to be." Damien turned his hand and gently held hers. That was enough for the evening, enough for the bench, enough for the quiet breathing of their son beside them. 3 years later, autumn returned to the Carolina coast with clear skies and cool wind. Noah ran ahead along the shoreline collecting shells as if each one had been placed there for him alone. He had Damien's dark eyes, Elena's smile, and the reckless confidence of a child loved by two people who knew exactly what love had cost. "Mom, Dad, look." He held up a shell no bigger than his thumb. Damien crouched. "That is impressive." Noah beamed. Elena laughed. "You said that about the last 6. They were also impressive." Noah ran toward the old bench near the lighthouse path. Elena and Damien followed more slowly. The lighthouse beam swept across the water, steady and pale against the evening. Noah climbed onto the bench between them and pointed toward it. "It never stops working." Damien sat beside him. "That's its job." Even when it's dark, Elena brushed wind-blown hair from Noah's forehead. "Especially when it's dark." Noah considered this with the seriousness of a child deciding whether adults had finally said something useful. Then he jumped down to chase another shell. Elena leaned back against the bench. Damien sat beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. For a while, they watched the water. The past was still there. It always would be. It no longer stood between them with a knife in its hand. It sat farther back now, quiet, remembered, changed by the life that had grown around it. Elena slipped her hand into Damien's coat pocket and touched the worn edge of her mother's library card. He looked at her. She smiled. Damien covered her hand with his. The lighthouse turned again, casting light over the dark water, over the rocks, over their son, laughing into the wind. And this time, when the light passed over them, nothing in Damien wanted to own the moment. He only wanted to be worthy of staying in it.